Borders 2023 Summit. I am joined today with the one and only Alexander Kapp, one of the figureheads of MyMun and MUN Command, although I believe you're focusing on the MyMun bit now, who is wearing... Are you wearing the newest merch? Can I confirm that?
I don't like to call it merch. Like, it's not like we're like a YouTuber with millions of followers and everybody's just like buying the stuff because they feel sort of a parasocial affection towards that person. It's more for MUNers who want to sort of share their passion by visual as well. And if you don't want to wear a suit at the moment, there is really like wear a suit and carry a gavel. There's no really a way to do it. And we just thought it would be fun. So we're doing it. And if anybody wants it, they can get it soon. If not, then that's fine. We have a bunch for ourselves and we actually love wearing it ourselves. So it's a win already.
Fantastic. Well, Alex, I mean, yeah, this is your session, how to get more delegates. So I'll give it over to you. Why don't you explain to begin with, what is MyMun and how can it help and what can we at the very basic level do?
Yes. All right. Firstly, Philippe, thank you very much for having me or us as MyMun here as well. It's a pleasure to be here. As you say, we're having obviously MyMun, our conference management platform where you can list your conference and you know bring exposure to your conference and then also manage applications, all those things. And it's something that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And it's this question of, you know, we have a conference, we want to do a conference. How do we get sort of to this delegate number that we were planning or envisioning? And some conferences sometimes have it really easy, and sometimes, or at least the conferences I always organized, it was incredibly difficult to reach those numbers. I remember I once organized a conference for 30 people. So maybe that makes me a bad person to talk about this, but that was also 2015, I think. So a lot of time has passed. 2016.
8 years ago now, Alex. 8 years ago.
Mate, it's incredible to think about that. But I'm still in the MUN circle anyway. But we are dealing with it on a daily basis now, obviously at MyMun. And we obviously have a tremendous interest in people, you know, conferences having all those applicants because, you know, it makes a happy organizer. And it's also obviously something though that is not just something that like, oh, go on MyMun, list your conference there and everything is done, right? There's no like one secret tool. So what we thought would be fun would be to really talk about and have a little bit of an exchange. Maybe that also allows us to get inspired a little bit of what else can be done in the future, and for you guys to just really have a few takeaways. So, with that being said, I want to have get a little bit of a sense of who you guys are. I know we're about 19 people in this conference.
Yeah.
So I prepared, I think, 2 questions.
I can show them on stage if you'd like. So you have, well, actually, the first one is this one. Have you ever organized a conference?
Yes. How can we make people do that?
They're looking at it now. They can vote now, and they are voting.
So yeah, go ahead and vote on this poll. I'm not even sure whether you're organizers or delegates or not. So if you're not, then not really my thing. Is also fine. That's all right.
And then I'll show the next poll.
Okay.
But 1 vote so far. People are still leaving the previous sessions and joining this one, so they'll be popping
I'm getting a supply of a grilled cheese sandwich. Excellent.
Wow. What service you have, Alex?
Oh, by the way, yes. To what I'm wearing as a t-shirt, this is a sweater to go along with.
Hi, good to see you. How are you doing?
Nice to see you. Oh, it's Philippe. Hi.
Yes, and there's another 20 people here.
Where's the dog? Bring the dog. We need the dog on this right now, and then that will.
At the dog.
The dog will make the numbers into the hundreds immediately. So.
Okay. We'll get those clicks for you. All right. Were you happy with the application numbers? Because obviously, that's something entirely. And we had no 2 people, and yes, 50 people as well, another 2 people. So, it would actually be interesting to hear from you guys now. Is it possible for people to like have a open mic or something?
Yes, we can bring them up on the stage. So if anyone wants to be brought up on the stage, that's very possible. Just put in the chat or put your hand up and we can bring you in.
Awesome. So I think that would be really interesting if we could really learn from each other here, because clearly we have some people who have organized a conference here, already, who have some experience in that way, and some of you guys were really happy with the application numbers that you did get. Maybe if we could first hear from somebody who was not very happy, and really like don't be shy. This is really for us to hear about it. Maybe you could describe your experience of what you've tried and to get those numbers going.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to get up on stage, just put your hand up. I think Tarek, can I bring you in? I think Tarek's also part of the team, and I feel like he's also had a lot of experience in this. Come on, Tarek. And then we have Roxana, Cecile, and Adele. If any of you want to join the stage to discuss your experience, please do. Tarek.
You don't have to. I can also just talk for a while, and maybe that will inspire you. But I always find it a bit more exciting if we can really pool our knowledge and can learn from each other.
Definitely. Thanks, Alex, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I missed your
we
voice.
had a bit of a conversation with you earlier or in the past few months, but it's lovely to have you here with us at MUNers across the waters again.
It's very exciting. Tarek, have you organized a conference before?
I have organized a few conferences, not on this part of the world, back in China. And I think the main trouble that I was having, and I think I might as well address this question to you, is about attracting first timers. And I know some people think this is easier, it's easier said than it's done, but people I think usually have this apprehension, especially if they don't share this, I would say, social science background, that this is something too big of a thing or too fancy of a thing for them to do. So what are some of the ways, I guess, that you might want to suggest in terms of attracting those first timers, specifically? Because in a lot of the conferences, first timers represent big numbers, and it's important that we're able to attract them. So that was one point that I felt like I struggled a few times when organizing those conferences.
Ooh, that's a really good point. Well, that's a pen that doesn't work. First timers, interesting. So in organizing this conference in China, how does it work? Do you get like associations or MUN clubs coming to your conference, or how does it work?
What we usually would do was, yes, we did have our own universities MUN Society, international students MUN Society more specifically. So our audience was overwhelming international students and a few Chinese students who would join us every now and then. We had this advantage because the university would keep getting international students from all across the world, Europe, Africa, North America, every year for exchange programs. So we had this new fresh body of students every year. But then a good number of those students have never done MUN before in their lives. And then they see these posters, or in these groups, they see these announcements coming or emails that are being sent about this conference that's coming. And even if they're interested in the topic, they're just too hesitant to participate because it just looks like this is such a fancy big thing that's just going to be too difficult for them to do, basically. I mean, they're fine with just watching it if that's an option, but they don't want to sign up as a delegate, pay for it, because that's also something. We have logistics where we charge people, although it was like really small amounts. But again, all of these were sort of factors that were contributing to those apprehensions. So we had a huge advantage, a good number of international students coming year after year, most of whom could speak English, but then most of them have never done MUN before. So convincing them to join these conferences that we usually did once a semester was a bit of a challenge for us.
Right. I think it's a really interesting point, and it quite nicely ties into one of the key things that I had noted down that would be interesting to talk about here. And indeed, what you mentioned, first timers are a big driver for application numbers. So what we see in our data is that roughly half of a conference participants are first time delegates, right? And they will have most likely never been on MyMun before, and they will have most likely not followed our Instagram, and they're definitely not on our newsletter. But getting those is really, really important. And obviously there's, I think, maybe two things about it. And the first thing that that there is, to me, is this idea of getting delegations to come to your conference. Because most of the first timers, you won't be recruiting them yourself, right? It's really having those close ties and connections to other MUN clubs as an organizing team, and them essentially recruiting at the university and bring them to your conference. And this is, I know, so much easier said than done, but it's, I think, the single most important thing that you can do and have is like a strong network. And we see that now as well as at MyMun. You know, the boys were at WorldMun now, had an incredible amount of conversations. They were literally just there to talk to other people instead of debating. But I think this is something that, like, I didn't do it as an organizer because maybe I was too lazy, or when you go to a conference, you know, you want to be there to share. You want to be there to be a delegate. But really, if you're thinking strategically about your own conference, you want to go to those conferences, especially if you're the head of a club or sort of management group of a club, whatever that's called, the board. You really want to go to conferences with a clear agenda of engaging with other delegations and building those social bonds for them to get excited about your own conference. And it's not just about you like selling your conference to them. It's just having a super close connection, being friends with them, and they want to come see you afterwards. Like I can't count probably the number of conferences that I've gone to just because friends were going there. And if you make friends and they end up being from the clubs, as it so happens, because you strategically sort of we're seeking that out, I think that can get you a lot of fresh delegates.
I'm just going to add to that. You know, one successful example is I would say the kind of Kuhlman, MyMun, Salamanca sort of group that's now expanded to Malta. They used to have Berlin involved, and that was really built just out of friends. You know, 10 years ago.
Incredible.
And that's now become essentially each of those conferences has the other on their agenda, and they're just always going. And that's a really successful way of delegations. And there's always some who come and go. You know, I've been a member of Kuhlman for a few years now. Sometimes Americans come, sometimes they don't. But there's always, as you say, Alex, that core that brings in new delegates. And then because, you know, you see friends built with friends, it really creates a network around that.
Yeah. That's a really good example. It's almost a cartel.
It does become a bit like that. And I mean, that does speak to, I guess, the issue of networking being an issue. And I mean, right now with three men on the stage talking about it. And I think that's maybe not the greatest example. And sometimes that can be an issue, that people don't feel as open or invited. And I think that's maybe a difficult one.
Yeah. Also, let me clarify. When I say cartel, like I mean it in the best positive way. Like having a strong network of associations is one of the best things you can have, not just in terms of getting applicants selfishly to your conference, but also in terms of learning from each other from conferences. And there was a similar thing going on here in South Germany, where like the guys from Karlsruhe, the guys from Mannheim, Heidelberg, I'm not even sure what the situation is there anymore, but back in my prime days, like 5 to 10 years ago, we had I remember we had like a little summit going on because here at my dad's house, which was empty at the time, and we just invited over, like, I think I was in the Constance MUN Society, and we were like, let's just take 200 euros of our money and invite everybody from Tübingen, like from 4 or 5 MUN clubs, to meet here, and we just spent the weekends thinking about how we can collaborate. And if you can maybe get something like that going, even I think that can go a long way, in addition to organizing going to conferences with sort of a clear making friends agenda.
I would just say, as a practical point of view, I want to, as someone who is USG delegates at MUN and then also SecGen and dealing with all that, I think you have to combine your outreach effectively with your delegates application. Because what I found was, you know, as USG delegates, it was quite useful that I knew who the outreach team was reaching out to. And then that meant that I could also say, oh, and by the way, if you want to come, we could give you discounts. We could, you know, make sure. MUN, I think 19 that I sec-genned, I think I managed to get almost 15 delegations there. It was one of the largest. It was the second largest conference in Germany, and that was just because of 2 or 3 years of pure delegation focusing. So it can bring good things. Sustainability is hard though. I think COVID knocked most of them out. But yeah. But anyway, maybe back to you, Alex. I mean, delegation.
No, Philip, please keep talking. I mean, COVID and conferences folding because of that. I think it's an interesting topic in itself, but maybe not necessarily something that so much goes into how you can get the most delegates to your conference. One more thing, Tariq, that I had to think of, and let me know what your thoughts are. But when I was organizing conferences, and like even right now, like we're still marketing mostly to MUNers, right? Maybe that's a mistake, right? Our sort of dream, vision, mission at MyMun is sort of that every student in the world should do at least one MUN conference in their life before they, I don't know, start a job and ruin the world with their close-mindedness due to a lack of MUN. That's a bit extremely phrased there, but I guess you know what I mean. But whenever we have any marketing material or whenever we talk to anybody, we talk to it from sort of our perspective as somebody who's already passionate about MUN. We say things like, oh, you can act like a diplomat. You can, negotiate with other people. You can talk in English and talk about resolutions. You can this and that. And those are all things that maybe you get to appreciate once you're a passionate MUNer. But as somebody who is just trying to mind their business studying, right? They're just there to have a learn at uni and whatever. Maybe those are not the drivers that are going to motivate you to go anywhere, right? Yeah. Where maybe we need to take a different perspective and try with a wholly different approach and try to really put a different perspective on that sort of learning experience that MUN is, right? Like essentially sell it as like a little, there might be like summer schools. Okay, it's not a summer school. It's a lot less than that. It's a one-day intense learning that can give you so much for your job. And if you, I can't come up with it on the spot now, but if you shift your communication, especially when you're talking to people who have no idea what on earth MUN is, it's like, look, you can learn more than you've learned in one semester at uni, and you can have a party at night. All of it costs 20 euros. Are you in? Like, okay, let's do it, right?
Exactly.
I think that can be a different approach. And what we used to do at our school is we would just go into lectures at the beginning of lectures, and we were able to just address 200-300 people at once and be like, look, hello, we do this. We wear suits and it's fun. And everybody's like, mate, what? I'm studying law. Leave me alone. It's in German. But if that perspective, just for a second, you forget about MUN and your whole international rules of procedure, excitement of being a diplomat, blah, 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 which obviously love, but might not be something that is an engineer might not think that being a diplomat is the most exciting thing in the world for a day. Shocker. So maybe that's something that yeah.
No, go ahead.
Might be worth sort of experimenting with. And I've never done it. I've never tried it to like really throw the whole playbook out the window and create something like a whole communication strategy from scratch in that direction. But it would be so interesting to see just what you could convert in like a 300-person like lecture hall if you just forget about MUN for a minute and just think about an amazing day of learning, which beats the whole semester of statistics, and you have a party at night.
Exactly. And it sort of sounds to some people as if you're like commercializing MUN, which is something that I'm not a big fan of. But then when you look at it from that latter perspective that you said of basically approaching people in a way that sounds interesting to them, I think it would really be an interesting experience, as you said, because you gave the example of engineers. I can give the example for a lot of other people with the similar STEM backgrounds who from the outside, as you just said, wouldn't really find anything interesting in joining that, or a law school student. I'm a law school student, so having enough work for ourselves already. But if you again just twist that a little bit and show them the other side of the coin and approach them that way, yeah, you can argue that it's commercializing, but then it also means you're actually bringing something on the table that might actually be interesting to them in the future. So I totally agree with you. I mean, it would be a very
I disagree with
experiment.
you. I disagree with you wholeheartedly. Like, from my perspective, it's not at all about commercializing. When I say it costs 20 euros, that's just what it costs to organize a day of a conference, because you get a lunch, you might have to pay for a venue, and you have to pay a beer at night as a social. It's 20 bucks gone right away, right? It's not about the commercial side of things. Like, and when we say we want people to do MUN, right? We don't want to do that. We don't say that because it's going to give us another 2 years of a share of a delegate fee because somebody applies to WorldMun, right? We could, in that case, we might as well just argue for Philippe to just go to a conference every week, which virtually he did, and that would be a lot more financially valuable. But the idea is like that you can gain so much from MUN, right? And that's what it's about. And yes, it costs some money for people to organize a conference, bloody hell, it does. Anybody been to WorldMun? Hello.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of reality. But I think what you get out of it, say 40 euros for 2 or 3 day conference, whatever.
And that's it. I mean, it's kind of like what you get out of it. I think that, in my opinion, what I love about MUN so much is it is the most soft skill learning intensive you can possibly get. When we say soft skills, every single one, and I've written about this on WiseMe, I have articles on this, is hit like hammer and nail at an MUN. The debating, the researching, and I think that for interviews, networking, genuinely, when I started this, I sort of, the idea of networking with someone, talking to someone in a professional environment, I didn't really understand that. But I think MUN helps because you're all in the same environment, you're all quite dressed up, and it's really useful for your professional life. And I think that maybe the issue is that we might all know that, but we don't sell it to the right audiences. And I think that we might know that it brings these things. And, to some students if you go to a lecture on social sciences, you can focus on soft skills. If you go to a lecture with engineers, you can focus on the research and, the fun side of it.
Even they have to negotiate. An engineer's not going to build a car by himself, right?
Yeah, exactly. Soft skills are useful everywhere. And I think that's one of the things that I like to bring. And maybe the part that we're trying to do with the MUNers Cross-Border Summit as well is that I don't think people are aware of how much MUN has done and is. When you have Barack Obama and Ban Ki-moon as famous MUNers, the King of the Netherlands was an MUNer. I mean, these people did it for a reason. And, I'm not saying without them, they wouldn't have got where they are, but, these do help. And I think that that's something we want to try and do as well, is build more of that understanding that MUN has done a lot for everyone. And it can do good in this case, for you, and that'll be kind of the point in.
Yeah, and like the thing is, it's not just like individuals becoming great for it. I think it's for me, I look at it on a much broader level. If you have an organization, say if you have a 200-person company doing some engineering stuff, whatever, you build valves, right? If every person in that company had done at least one MUN conference, I am sure everybody would have a much more pleasant working experience, and the company would probably perform better as well, right? Oh, he's talking about finance again, commercializing. No, it's true. Like, I've worked in public administration. There are so many people. It's the hard reality that we're just unpleasant to work with. A lot of meetings are incredibly difficult, and that will be the case in every organization. But imagine if everybody had done a day of MUN and would be able to sort of put themselves in somebody else's shoes. And
I don't know what you want to talk about next, Alex, and please, if we're move this, but what
open agenda?
Yeah, I think one of the main issues this be raised is accessibility, and I mean that for both. In a class way, in a gender way, in many ways, I think the accessibility and barriers to MUN, even if they're only perceived, are quite hard to overcome. What are some things that MyMun has done to address this? I think you have looked at it. I mean, for one thing, the existence of the MyMun platform as an accessibility issue is one of them. But are there any things that you've felt from that you've tried to inspire in your debates?
Philip, it's incredible. Like the invitation that you're giving me to promote MyMun itself here.
Maybe
Because
not
I
just
think-
MyMun itself, but you, I think, as a platform for MUN, have a particular interest in breaking down barriers. So, what
I
were
think-
some of those that you found, and how did you try and do it?
I think, I mean, don't quote me, I'm going to have to look myself. But I believe MyMun.com, our tagline says, making MUN conferences more accessible and easier for delegates and easier to host for organizers. It's literally our mission, because MUN shouldn't be difficult to access, neither for delegates nor for organizers. We want to allow organizers to just go ahead and organize a conference without needing to invest incredible amounts of time into making up Excel spreadsheet rules on how they want to assign people, right? We want to make it easy for people to organize it. At the same time, we want to make it easy for delegates to find a conference near to them or online, or just have an easy process of going to that conference without having to worry about sort of communication aspects. Where is all my information? All of that, just make that whole journey easier for people. So we try to facilitate that mostly on sort of a software engineering side so far. And it also goes to during the conference, where not the whole point, but a big point of MUN Command, right, which is sort of our software for during the conference, which chairs use, which delegates use, which organizers use at the same time, and sort of all connected. It allows delegates to look at motions, understand the different motions just interactively whilst it's happening, to see who are the speakers, what are the motions on the floor, to not get lost, to always be in there, and not just spend 2 days effectively, instead of having the learning experience of their lives, just trying to figure out what the fuck rules of procedure means. So that's really sort of our mission. And we try into that. Obviously, now we are just almost done launching our series of, we call it masterclass videos, where again, for some clubs might not have the resources or the experience to host extensive training sessions, or you as a conference organizer just want to share something with first-time delegates so they're sort of up to speed as they come to the conference. So what you find on mymun.com/learn now is a series of videos which are anywhere between 10 and half an hour long, about how you can be a good delegate. And it's not about the most intricate details of how to, be the best delegate at MUN in New York, but it certainly gets you up to speed. So you're sitting at the conference and you're just not lost. I think that's just the worst case scenario. You're sitting in a chair for a day and not knowing what's going on and just desperate. And that's what we're trying to avoid. But
yeah, I'm just going to invite Adele onto the stage, who did also want to join us. This is best delegate,
yes.
and another Canadian, so Tarek can feel at home. Hi, Adele. So great to have you on here as well. What do you think about some of the things you've just been talking about? So accessibility, about sort of getting first timers in.
Yeah, so I am from Vancouver, Canada, and I am organizing a conference this year, North Shore MUN. So I live on the North Shore, and we're getting all the schools in 2 school districts together, and we're having like a Model UN conference, and we're also doing the UNHCR challenge for one of our committees, which is exciting. And so basically what it leads into what Alexandra is saying, where what we noticed was that a lot of delegates were hesitant to join because they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. So as clubs executives, what we did was we made sure that we had presentations, and then I don't know how this would work on MyMun, but we had posted an anonymous Google form to our Google Classroom, and we had delegates ask all the questions that they were confused about. And then we actually put them all into a Google slide and we responded to them. And because it was anonymous, no one knew who was asking it. So no one was afraid to ask for anything. And so that was the first thing. And then the second thing was that some delegates didn't know like what MUN would lead to. So from a high school perspective, of course, there's like, well, you can do university, like MUN in university. And my school is really lucky because we have a political studies model UN course, which students can take in grade 11 and 12. And so for our delegates, it was like, well, you can do this for grades. And so that was a big motivation. But also just letting delegates know like opportunities to volunteer with United Nations Association Canada, or like, well, UNHCR has volunteers, just different opportunities connected to MUN. Yeah, thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Adele. So in terms of, I think I love the idea, by the way, of this this anonymous question form. I think that's a really smart idea. It's like a gossip box that has a point. Philippe, you were trying to interject as well.
I just want to say, this is a really good point what Adele mentioned about like what's the point of it. I want to bring in some of my experience in Asia, where in India, for example, best delegates get money, they get scholarships. It's actually linked to tangible things that affect. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that they should, and I must admit the debates are fierce, more than I've seen in the US, Canada, Europe. They get pretty intense. But they are linked to more than just the conference. And I think that's because of a lot of buy-in from not only universities, because I guess MUN is a bit more unique as a learning activity in India and Asia than it would be in Europe, where there are also other opportunities in North America. But also there's a huge amount of buy-in from the UN regional office, who actually helps these MUNs. And I think there's a bit more understanding that sort of they can work there. And I do feel that that's one of the reasons India is the most active continent for MUN by far and away. In terms of the amount of people who participate, it's huge. Most of them unlisted. They have several conferences where thousands of delegates participate, and I think that's maybe not the way forward, because I think I see the issues with it, but definitely these tangible reasons where that everyone can understand. Like Adele was saying, in this case, it'd be sort of volunteering opportunities, working with the UNA. Obviously, in India, say you get some money, which fine is maybe blank, but these awards can mean something. This will help your grades. This will help your uni. So that's also an interesting one. I don't even remember if it was EY or maybe Tata Consultancy, but I even remember one conference linking a job kind of to the conference would get together and nominate the best person, and they would get like a 6-month internship followed into a job essentially, which again, very intense. But if we want to up our game and link MUN to really what you can do for the world and how it links, how to get more delegates, I think that's a good way of translating it into tangible.
It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thought. I also know of some consulting agencies, or do you call them agencies still? Like consulting groups, maybe, who were definitely using the MUN world to send out their recruiters and do courses. One more thing I want to talk about, though, in the context of you getting delegates, is the classic issue of just the communication while you pay a conference, right? And you guys, this is a conference of sorts, MUNers across borders. You've done a fair effort as well. I've seen your posts on Instagram and everything. It's something I think that a lot of conferences struggle with. Philippe, Derek, do you want to maybe talk about how it's been for this conference now, how you've been dealing with, and how you feel about how it's gone?
Sure. I think the issue is that because we're quite new as a concept as well, the only other MUN summits have been run by the UN, where obviously they have the whole Global Department of Communications, and we are on the stage. But the problem is that we might have a lot of support as an idea, but getting everyone to share that is very difficult, because everyone has their own things they want to share, because obviously there's only a finite amount of people they kind of all have, and pushing that in the right way has been hard. I mean, MyMun, I think, has been quite good on this, as of a couple of our other partners. But I would say that, you know, we've been in contact with well over 1,000 MUNs and UNAs, well over, possibly multiple thousands. I mean, our partnership team have been incredibly active on that. And I would say that because of the way that MUNs work, where they might only be active for a few months of the year, and also the kind of inherent competition of it, we've tried to be as uncompetitive as possible, which is difficult for the same week as, you know, Waldman and everything. That's been quite hard. I would say that, yeah, getting others to share has been the hardest bit. And, you know, as much as, and the comms team has been doing a great job at sharing things about the conference, but having that stick has been quite difficult. Tarek, I don't know if there's anyone to add to that.
I think
Adele, I'm going to add on from my. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
no, go ahead. I was just going to add to his first point only because it's a very new concept, and I think that's very important because the only other, as Philip pointed out, MUN Summit has been done by the UN itself. So even today, when we were making all those promotions, you know, sharing it on our social media accounts and whatnot, one of the priorities is to point out this is not, in capital letters, not an MUN conference, because that's the first key issue that we're facing. We're trying to deliver a message that this is not an MUN conference, and, you know, you have to make your decision accordingly if you want to join, because then, you know, it's a series of panels. It could offer you a much different perspective than an MUN conference could offer. These are two different things, right? And it's been a challenge, honestly. I've been, you know, a part of this organization for 2 years. Philip, you know, as the founder, has been here for 3 years, over 3 years actually now. And I think that's still a struggle that we're having while making the promotions on social media, while reaching out to people that we know, organizations that we know, to give them this, to prove that this is not an MUN conference. It's something different. It's something that you might, you know, want to join for a different reason. So that's been a challenge for us so far, definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, marketing to MUN clubs, or like selling effectively, is what you guys are doing in a way. It's incredibly difficult, just by the nature of how people are reached, and how sort of the cycle of conferences is as well. And people sometimes, you know, after conference, you know, nobody might look in their emails or the Instagram for 3 months because nobody cares. And it's incredibly hard to communicate consistently there. But I've noted it down for now. And before I share a few thoughts of my own, Adele, you as somebody organizing a conference yourself, an MUN conference, how are you guys doing? Are you active on social media? Are you talking a lot to conferences, partners? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so we're really lucky that we, due to like liability issues, we can't actually have students from schools outside of like those schools that have agreed to participate and that have sent a sponsor teacher. So we only have to do like advertising to school clubs directly. And because we only have like a handful of schools, we actually have the ability to contact like the heads of each club directly. And this is actually something I was thinking of. So like contacting like the heads of even small conferences to kind of get like the MUN Summit like name out there might be like a idea to think about, or even contacting like high school clubs, because at least for my school, we get together every single week. So like every week we meet, we do something related to Model UN, and that would be something that like next year my club could do like a day where we discuss MUN Summit and I can talk about my experience. So doing that to like different clubs or different people that attended this MUN Summit, having like their clubs know about it, may also be a nice way to do networking.
Interesting. High school conferences, especially established ones who have sort of their faculty advisor connections, it's, I think, the most envious position almost to be in, because, you know, as a teacher, you have a schedule. You go to this conference in spring, you go to that conference in fall. You're done with that, and all the organizers are like, all right, then teacher, come on, then get on the bus, get over here. And you're getting them all. No, but it's a really good thought as well, of talking to them as well, and like getting those right people and building a connection with them as well is so tremendously valuable. I think that shows that, where if you are able, and I think it goes back into our network point from earlier as well, if you can have that connection with that one person, like, it doesn't matter whether they were able to connect to the Instagram account of a given conference or society. If you just know the person and they're on it, and you know that they're on it, it's a very different thing, I suppose, and it's much more present in their mind as well. One thing I want to talk about, and it's near and dear to my heart, is social media. No, actually, before we talk that, the partner sharing aspect, and that goes into social media as well. Also, marketing to conferences. Before, I want to share my thoughts on that as first as well. It's so incredibly difficult, and we know that from our side, from our experience as well. And I think one key to that is consistency as well. And oftentimes you're like, oh, I wrote an email to Club XYZ and they know about our conference now. Hopefully they come. It's not enough. And it's unfortunate, and it's a big problem that I've personally found with us as people organizing. Conferences are volunteers essentially. So nobody wants to sit there every 2 weeks and send a new creative email about how they're missing out if they're not coming. But essentially, I think if you want to have success in penetrating through to those clubs where you don't have that rock solid connection yet, or where you want to, on top of that rock solid connection, build something more, then being on them almost every 2 weeks about your conference, about what they're missing out on, about why they're going to die if they don't come to your conference, and why they should be full of coming to your conference, then you're likely to have a very, very hard time. And one thing that we usually recommend is to think about all the things you're doing as an organizer, right? A lot. You might have it on some sort of note-taking app platform, whatever they're called these days. Asana used to be something that some conferences used, but I think Asana's pretty dead now. So you might be using Trello, Notion, whatever. Whatever you do in a given week, send out an email about it, just so everybody knows. It's the most simple thing, and it's surely not the thing that gets you the most people. The more work you put in, the more creative you are about it, the more you get out of it. But if you just communicate with a little bit of creativity, every single thing you do, I think people will be much, much more aware of your conference. And somebody in the MUN club on Tuesday will be like, oh, by the way, did you see that email? They're having delegate applications now. They've already assigned the first people. Shouldn't we go there? Yeah, okay. You and me? Okay, let's go. I think that's one of the things: consistency, and just doing it a lot. And that not only goes for whatever communication channel you have, be it DMs, WhatsApp messages, club groups, email lists, but it also goes for social media. And you might not have the biggest following there, but it might just be that the key people are following you. Those who are most passionate about your conference, those are who are likely to bring a whole group of friends along to your conference. They might just be following you and seeing it. And especially when you have that consistency, and we see that on MyMun as well. One of the biggest drivers for your conference is, in terms of applications, is a sense of seriousness, a sense of legitimacy, right? And we see that quite clearly on the platform. Conferences who fill in their full MyMun page, previous conferences, ratings, committees, description, prices, fees, chairs, pictures, beautiful city, we have a logo, look at us. We have a tagline, we're so serious. That just gives delegates a sense that you care. And all I want, if I go to a conference and spend 300 euros for flights and train and participation fee, and maybe even more because I have to pay for accommodation, then all I want to know is that this is a conference that the people organizing it care about. And if you send an email every other week about what you're doing about it, I get that sense that you really care, and it's a serious conference. They're doing stuff, things are happening, right? And that's why this is so important, to also just be on top of your communication on essentially every channel. And I know it's hard work, and I know you're doing it for free, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the delegates coming in, it's all been for nothing, right? One more thing I want to touch on in sort of that context as well is social media. And I know most people organize a conference, they don't have a professional social media person in their team. I never had. I wish I did. But it can be certainly a powerful tool because people are there spending there so much time. And it doesn't have to be difficult, I think, to have a presence there. If you're mega lazy, which I'm not judging, we have a lot to do, especially as a conference organizer, especially a conference organizer with a small team. Just post pictures from last year. Just keep posting pictures from last year every week and write something in the caption. Just have your team playing the conference in a funny room. Take a half decent picture with your iPhone or Xiaomi Mi 75 and post it. Just post, document what you're doing, right? You don't have to be mega creative, creating the wildest content. Just document. It's the same thing as with what I mentioned before with the just tell everybody what exactly every single step. Today we assigned one person. Tomorrow we'll assign another person. Yesterday we assigned 3 people at once. It was amazing. Just take that, right? If you want to get a bit more creative, okay, I would suggest, and this is, so obviously we have the MyMun Instagram account, and one thing that we do with the Instagram account of MyMun is we follow a lot of conferences. And again, I'm not, like, don't get me wrong, but I suggest you do that too with your conference account. Just scroll through your feed. There's a lot that hurts. Just visually speaking as well. And if you don't feel like you can create beautiful posts, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Just put pictures from last year. Just put pictures of what you guys are doing. You don't have to try really hard to create something mega designy and beautiful. Like, it's fine. But I usually find that it's rather to then take a step back and be aware of that instead of then it can easily ruin almost your image in a way if you try too hard and it turns out to be, I know I've done plenty of that myself, trying to build interfaces on the MyMun side. One thing that can make it easier, and I think where this feed can come into play again, because some conferences, oh my god, like, who's organizing those? Who's doing that social media? It's so good. Some of it is so pretty. I'm like baffled. And some of it is really inspiring. Look at it. This is pretty. Isn't it pretty? It's a clear call to action. It stands out. Who does this? And I think this is one piece of advice. It's super simple, but that you might not be doing because you're on your own personal Instagram, because that's probably more interesting. Just scroll through it and look for inspiration. And if you just copy people a little bit, you can make things that look really, really pretty, and you don't have to be a designer for it. So just give it a shot, see what comes out. If what comes out, you're like, hey, really? My sister could have done that better. Just leave it. Just take the picture as it stands. But just going through it and finding some inspiration, I think, goes a long way.
Question there, though, Alex. With all the design, I know it's a bit of a controversial thing. Are you more in favor of those individual professional designs, or are you in more favor of, those conferences where, I don't know,
you have a background, can't see anything?
Yeah,
but in front of
the consistent background where they're sort of spamming your timeline, but then when you open the account, it actually all matches perfectly, like the pieces of a puzzle.
Oh yeah, those.
It's really common in Asia, though. I tell you, it's really common in Asia, especially in East Asia.
So this is really random, and I hope people don't really leave all of us now. Can we do a poll on that? Where do I create new polls?
It's on the right. I can add it.
Okay, I don't think enough people have an opinion on that. But Tarek, to answer your question, we had a little bit of a debate internally about that as well.
Okay.
Because we had a social media intern way back when, he was a big fan of a grid. I was like, mate, what are you doing? Nobody cares. And now Jazz, who is doing most of our social media, she's also kind of a big fan of grids, or she used to be, just because of the consistency. Oh, there you go. So individual posts, or do you prefer to have
I'm calling
that
them
beautiful grid style view?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, it's going to be difficult to find an example ad hoc right now. Actually, no. If we just scroll through and look for a conference that a post that looks really, really weird.
I gotta admit, that's a lot in favor. I feel Europe. I think it's cultural, to be honest. I think in Europe, individual ones.
Do you like this?
Yeah. Grid ones are very good, in my opinion, when you announce the next year. When you announce the next year conference, they're great to put a break to show you're doing something new. Yeah. And actually, Alex, if I could just make a small statement. So I've been working with non-profit organizations for about 5 years now. And one thing I would say, if an MUN is a registered non-profit, or maybe in your case, Adele, you're linked to a university, there is a lot of free tools. Google for non-profits, Google for universities gives you free emails, free tools, a lot of free things. Canva for non-profits, get you Canva Professional. I've set up 3 of those already for my non-profits. And I have to admit, that gives you almost everything you ever need. There's also WordPress for nonprofits. There are, I think Wix does one too. Every single, even some of the new AI tools that have come out, they have specific non-profit versions whereby you get professional for free. And honestly, if there's a single MUN that's a non-profit that hasn't applied for these things, I would say you have to, because it's a really good way to get really powerful tools that, professional companies are using too. And it makes your life a lot easier.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that in a second, Philippe. Individual. So we have 4 votes for individual and 0 votes for the grid. I heavily am in favor of the individual because, people, you want to grab people in my mind, the most important thing about an Instagram post is to grab your attention. It's the most difficult thing and it's the most important thing. Once you have somebody's attention, then you can do whatever. But I think this is the most difficult thing. And this is something that I've been talking to Jazz about as well. Like, how can we do that? Because it's really hard. And I think if you are sacrificing some of your attention grabbiness because you have to fit in a grid, then that hurts. That's why I don't like it. But I think, Philippe, you made an excellent point. And if you are sort of closing out your conference, just announcing the date for next year, and people sort of effectively start to use your Instagram page as a website of sorts. Speaking as a boomer, I'm not actually, but then I think that there is definitely some merit to it, and I love that idea. And it can also be a visual break because you're likely going to have a new person doing the social media from then on. So, Philippe, I think that's actually an excellent.
That's what Isamu did for the past few years, and I think it's been quite useful. But so that's nice. A bit of self-promotion, I guess.
And then I want to get back to one more thing that you mentioned, and especially for most people who are doing MUN, who are not semi-professional designers, Canva is great. It's a tool that I love and I hate, but it's great. Especially, there's so much inspiration there as well. Like, you can just take essentially like a slide deck, and then you have like 5 different possible designs for posts, and you just recycle those time and time again with different content. And again, Philippe, you mentioned there's something special going on for a non-profit situation. I know as well that certainly until last year still, if you got a GitHub account with your student email, so GitHub it's kind of a programming cloud thing. Don't worry about it. You don't need it, most likely, but you can get an education account there with their university email. And once you do that, you get some benefits and some coupons with that account. And one of those coupons is for 1 year of Canva Pro for free. So you don't have to be a registered nonprofit, which many MUN clubs are, or like groups are not, right? So you can just get a GitHub Pro account with your education email, and well, then go for the coupons. That's what I've been doing with various edu emails I've had in my lifetime as well. And on Canva, I mean, I don't like 2 years ago, it was something that you could talk about because it's new and exciting. I feel like now people know about it more likely than Photoshop. But you can get inspiration there. You can just take a template, throw your own picture in, put some different text, throw it on Instagram, and it's going to be one of those that I gush about on my feed. So don't hesitate to use those tools. Is definitely one of the big tips there. Don't hesitate either, I feel, to boost your posts there. I feel especially, it depends a little bit on how tiny your village is where you're organizing a conference, but especially just if you think about the right messaging, especially for first timers, right? Why would a random person in the street go to this conference on Sunday? If you have a clear message about that and a decent post, throw 50 euros on it, throw 100 euros on it. If 3 delegates sign up because of it, you already recouped your cost probably, right? And that way you might be able to get new delegates. What we think usually in London, for example, you can just straight up promote to MUNers, right? You don't even have to think about first timers because in London there's so many MUNers hanging around on every street corner. But even in different cities, I think you can get a lot out of that. And a day of learning for 20 euros with free coffee and a lunch. I mean, come on, that's what your lunch would have almost cost anyway. So I think that's something I would encourage you to do. I can't go over this block without mentioning that as MyMun, we have a certain reach as well, and we do offer assistance. So if you want to have a bigger reach on social media, we help with that. We design some posts on your behalf, share them on our social media, and essentially that's the story. So just in case you want to have more reach, we have some tools we can help you with there as well. I've also at one point been working on an automatic post generator for MUN Conference. There's a prototype actually, which I have somewhere on a GitHub branch, as it so happens, where we take all the data from your conference on that you put on MyMun, and we use an image website where we can sort of pull the images from automatically and use them as backgrounds and automatically create a bunch of social media posts for you, which look, it's me. They don't look gorgeous, but they look like decent enough, right? So this is something that might be coming at some point down the road if I ever get back to building that. If that's interesting to you, reach out to us, leave a comment or something along those lines.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all the promotion I'm going to do to adapt.
No worries, Alex. No, thank you very much. So it's surprising because I feel like it's almost been minutes, but we're almost at the end of our session. So Alex, I mean, I want to ask a final question, like I do with the other sessions, a positive one. Something that I like to, use so that people can walk away. What is something that you are excited for in the future in the world of MUN? And if you say merchandise, then go for it. But you've got to give us a discount. What's the MUNers Cross Borders discount code then?
Ooh, that's it. I'm not even sure how we make discount codes. No, what am I excited for in the world of MUN? A World MUN Day, of course. Jesus Christ, what is it?
Well, no, yeah, of course, but you're in it. You're in it, so that's already the default. Yeah.
Isn't that like a separate thing, like that the UN recognizes it or something?
We're working on that. We're working on that.
No, I think what I'm just excited about now is that we just had a World MUN, and it's been normal. Nobody had to wear a mask. They had 4 socials on 4 days, and I haven't heard yet about anyone with COVID. So I think I don't want to drag on about COVID, but it's just, it feels like we're doing it again. And I feel like these days it is becoming more accessible because we have more tools available to us than ever. We've always been in the digital age. I mean, all the four of us at least. But more and more tools are becoming available to make it more accessible. More people are providing educational stuff on their websites. I know, Adele, Best Delegate, you have unbelievable resources on your website as well about how people can actually smash it at a conference. And because of that, anybody we can get interested in again can actually go there and have a great time at their first conference. And I think that's what I'm really excited about right now.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much, MyMun and MUN Command, for your support. Have a wonderful evening. Good luck with all of your future. Make sure to let us know, and of course, we will share it too. Thank you very much, Adele. Thank you very much, Tarek, for joining this session too.
Yes,
we now have another break.
Much appreciated.
And then do make sure to watch for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
See you soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you guys for having us.